Next up, I'd like to introduce Philip Smith, who'll be presenting RouteViews Update BGP Techniques for Service Providers. Philip's a senior network engineer at the NSRC, which is the Network Startup Resource Center, and traveled from Brisbane to join us today. Now, folks who've been coming to Nanog for a long time will surely recognize Philip. This is his 24th Nanog presentation. His first talk was at Nanog at Scottsdale, Arizona in 2001. Some of us I know were there watching that presentation. It was BGP for Internet Service Providers. So welcome, Philip. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. All these introductions kind of make me feel a bit old, but it only feels like a couple of years ago. But so yeah, I'm here with a very different hat on. I mean, over the years, I've really been, I suppose, the BGP tutor for Nanog, which always surprised me. But anyway, a Scot living in Australia coming to North America to teach BGP. There surely should be people in this part of the world who can do the same thing. But anyway, apparently I was good enough to replace Howard Berkowitz, who was the tutor before that. But anyway, that's nothing to do with this. Yeah, so this has ended up being another hat. So I work some of my time, a lot of the time, with the Network Startup Resource Center. And in recent years, probably the last 3 years or so, I've been helping out with the RouteViews project. I hope all of you know what RouteViews is. It started 1995, really by a few network operators supported by folks like Dave Meyer, Greg Shepard, and so on at the University of Oregon. Because, well, I'll put my network operator's hat on from back then, was we wanted to see what our BGP announcements looked like elsewhere on the planet. You know, certainly from my point of view, sitting in the UK network, we wanted to see what our routes looked like from the North America perspective. And as the internet grew and through the 90s, being able to see what it looked like in Asia and so forth was important too. So I think those of you who've been around quite a long time will know the project, and you appreciate this ability to log in somewhere and see where things look like. So what I'm trying to do, I'm not going to read any of these. You can go and read this all later. It's just the background and the support for the project. I mean, RouteViews has been supported by the National Science Foundation for a very, very long time to keep this community project going, because it's hosted at the University of Oregon. But in the last couple of years, NSRC has been asked to operate the infrastructure. The previous folks, well, we're all getting old. We talked about getting old. You know, Dave is long retired, and folks like John Kemp have retired as well. And I don't think I'm quite the next generation, but at least NSRC are now looking after the project for the good of the global community. And we've got quite a lot of the team here, actually, at Nanog over the last 2-3 days. I may as well just show up the pictures of the team members. You'll have, hopefully, have seen Hans Kuhn and Owen Conway wandering around. We've met with quite a few folks, exchange points, infrastructure providers, and so forth. Nina, unfortunately, couldn't be with us. Some of you will probably know Nina from her time on the Nanog Program Committee, but she's Kentic and what was else, Netflix, Tele-Denmark, and so on. So very well known in the peering community. So you'll be seeing a lot of Nina and Owen, definitely. Maybe me too. I live in Australia, which, okay, that's kind of a long way away as well. But you know, I come over to this side of the world every now and then. So you probably see me popping up from time to time for RouteViews things also. So those are us, supported by the rest of the folks at NSRC, several who have been here this week as well. So what is it? It's a tool that lets internet operators look at their BGP table from, well, now it's many vantage points around the world. I mean, the first one started off, you could just jump onto the router, host at the University of Oregon, and see what things looked like. But of course, that was interesting. And then there were a few more nodes appeared across US. And then the first international node was in Japan. And then they started adding, I think links came soon after that in London. So these started adding around the world, and it gave folks perspective of what the BGP table looked like. And of course, as I hope you all know, the BGP table is different every single place you look at it. So it gives folks ability to look at reachability, hijacks, bugs in BGP, which was always my fun thing, peer visibility, mass withdrawals, RPKI status we've added more recently. So we have a couple of validators now that all the collectors talk to. So you can simply jump onto the collector and find out validation state for your prefixes, or validation or otherwise. And because operators find it really, really useful, they also want to give us a BGP feed as well, so that it helps other people. So as this all grows, I mean, I think today we've got about 1,700 BGP feeds on all the collectors around the world. So that gives folks a really good opportunity to jump into some remote place and see what the BGP table looks like from there, which means that folks accessing content they host can actually, you can see what the path is going to be to get there. So the collectors are all sitting at internet exchange points, or the vast majority are. I mean, the slide says strategically positioned. I think that's probably a wishful thing. We're getting a lot better. We're adding a lot more collectors, but we're trying to find, I suppose, the interesting places around the world. Of course, there's some folks who will not go to internet exchange points. Most of the tier ones don't go to exchange points. And so what we also offer is some multi-hop collectors, which are hosted at the University of Oregon, so you can send us a multi-hop feed there. Also, some providers, they are at exchange points, but the routers they use are only like small fib, and so they can't carry the full BGP table there. So they will then give us a multi-hop full feed to the collectors back at base. So there's a map. I don't know how visible it's going to be now. I didn't think it would work too well. I mean, you can have a look on the website. So there's a fair chunk in North America, but what we've been doing in recent years is adding more. We've got a few more in Latin America, which is great. Africa's still a bit bare. Asia's still a bit bare, given the geographical size. And Europe is a little bit bare as well. I mean, yes, the RIPE NCC run the RIS project, which we collaborate with. We work very well with RIS, which is fantastic. And, we're trying to increase the footprint in the same way that they've been trying to increase the footprint as well. So we're up to 47 collectors. It's just a few days ago, we turned off the final Quagga collector. So that's been really a very big win for us. So we're all based on free-range routing, FRR, as you know. So the map there needs a little bit updating because of Nanook slide deadlines. But at least, the project is moving forward. But it lets you see where they are. And, we've got some gaps that we're trying to fill in, as I'll talk about in a little bit. So what's been happening of late? And I'm just trying to give it like a sort of, a recent news update about what's going on. Greg Shepard presented at the Seattle Nanog last year, and so I'm trying to just give you the updates, what happened in the years since. So we're now all on FRR, which is great news. We're using either the 9.1 or release 10 versions. We've got probably about 50-50 between the two. And we still have that Cisco, well, it's now ASR 1004. I don't know, I'm kind of, nostalgic a little bit. The very first one was a Cisco, I forget which model number, I think it was 7200 or just the model before. I'm sure there was a model before that, but certainly the 7200 I remember well. So ASR 1004 there just as the original RouteViews.routeviews.org. But otherwise, we're using FRR now simply because the previous operators of RouteViews started off with Zebra, which became Quagga, which is now FRR. But we're not wedded to FRR at all. We're wedded to something that will let us collect full BGP table. Another thing that we're doing is trying to move collectors from metal to VMs. Metal bricks, especially the spinning rusty things inside them, and trying to do remote hands and getting hosts to pop into data centers to swap hard drives or fix broken hardware is time consuming. So a VM, the VM breaks, you zap it, and we start all over again. So we're trying to move as much as we can into VMs. And so it sounds easy. I can stand here and say that in 30 seconds. But whenever it comes up, we have to do the move from Metal to VM. It's a fair amount of work to actually coordinate all that, especially because we gather all the BGP updates. We get full BGP table as well every 2 hours. And what we're trying to do is not lose data, because when we lose data, people say, "Oh, what happened in the 2 hours here?" Well, we're trying to move from Metal to VM or whatever we have to do. For recent location updates, we got Kinks. That's the exchange point in Seoul in Korea. I think that one was up and running about 2-3 weeks ago. So that's been, well, not long term, but it's taken a bit of while to actually get that in place and happening. So that will give us nice visibility in Korea. Kicks in Atlanta, Packwave in Los Angeles, the exchange point in Baghdad, and PIT, Mexico, and Santiago, and so on. So those are the recent new ones, probably within the last year or so we've put up. Part of the problem of standing on this stage and lots of other peering, fora, and NOG stages is that we get offers of new locations, which is hugely appreciated. But we need resources. Owen joined us a couple of months ago, so that's a very, very welcome addition to the team. And Nina has joined us as well, just started as peering coordinator. So with 2 new folks working pretty much full-time on RouteViews infrastructure, it means we can start catching up with a lot of these. Some of the, it's like people were talking to me peering Asia last year, and they say, "Philip, we'll see you peering Asia this year," which is actually in a couple of weeks. What happened to that collector we offered to host? It takes time to do these things, and so we're trying to ramp up without, killing ourselves pretty much. But the exciting things are, 2 of these. The first one is the API. RouteViews historically has always been, telnet onto the router and do show IP BGP or show BGP or whatever. And as you know, with a router that's got 20 full feeds, the router goes away, you can go away, make a cup of tea, get a coffee, come back, and you might get something on the screen. The problem is that's nice when one person does it. When hundreds do it, and usually scripts or bots, then it really is pretty bad for the collector. We start losing data because we're capturing updates every 15 minutes and the full feed every 2 hours. It starts impacting the consumers of the collector. So we really desperately want to get away from telnet. So the API is in beta testing at the moment. We've got our little group of testers who are checking it out, and hopefully real soon, as in next month or 2, we should be able to make that available to the wider community to use. And that will let us get people away from all the telnet access. Telnet will stay there, probably on one collector. Maybe it's just the Cisco router or whatever, just for legacy users, because some people still use it. Another thing I want to get to is onto a looking glass. Most internet exchange points and other places have looking glasses. So for folks who don't need programmatic access, but just want to jump onto something, these days everybody's point and click at stuff. Certainly a lot of the workshops I do, the younger generation kind of shock horror about keyboards. So if we can do a point and click access to the collectors, it would be a lot better. And it's also means we can turn telnet off finally on the RouteViews infrastructure. And the other exciting one is BMP. So that's, folks have been working hard on that in the last couple of months so that we can deliver live BGP updates via, there's a big amount of Kafka infrastructure has gone in place to actually provide that BMP feed. So again, that's in testing. And, again, friends of RouteViews are testing it for us at the moment. And hopefully, real soon, we can make that available. And that will let folks who need real-time access to what's going on in the global table actually get it that way, rather than having to go to our archive and download the MRT, and then it causes problems overloading the archive. So certainly the API and BMP is very, very exciting. I know Shep talked about it last year as the project was starting to get underway, but we're now so close. And so hopefully by the end of this year, early next year, you can all use it if you need. But a lot's been happening behind the scenes. I mean, I sometimes feel that we're all run ragged trying to catch up. There's a lot of what we call technical debt because the infrastructure has been run, in folks' spare time at the University of Oregon by the IT services, and they've run this as they've had time to do it. So we've had a lot of catch up to do. Now we've got proper resourcing with just upgrading things, old spinning disks, old hardware. The tooling of the whole infrastructure. We don't want to have to log into everything by hand and change things. So getting all the tooling up to date and make the scripting work properly, deploy new peers and so forth. We still have quite a lot of collectors running CentOS. Well, CentOS is end of life, and we need to get away from that because there are no more patches and so forth. Moving on to Ubuntu, just because that's what we at NSRC are using in our daily everything else. I mean, FRR itself, that's what we've inherited. Is it the best thing? Don't really know. We always have people sometimes when I'm more doing a technical talk, oh, but you should be using X or Y or whatever. And it's like, well, we need something that just collects BGP table. And so there's some promising projects out there that are just collectors, the BGP for collectors, whereas FRR is a proper routing, software routing daemon. And we have badly behaving peers. We have lots of fun and games with some BGP implementations. I'll just leave it at there. I was a bit more direct in the tutorial yesterday. That what we just call badly behaving peers, they're giving us mountains and mountains of BGP updates for really we don't know why. And so that's causing issues because we store all this data. Every single thing that we have learned since 1997, I think the storage started then, is archived. And so we get mountains of BGP updates. These are all in the archives. So it becomes a disk storage problem as well. Future planning, more collectors, more hosts, but trying to be a bit strategic about it. Unique or specialist environments is what I've called it there. Large exchange points, dense interconnection. Improve community support as well. I mean, this is a community project. It's not commercial. And so we need funding support. NSF has been helpful. A lot of our sponsors noted on the link there are very, very supportive as well. But as we go to more locations, we need to be able to fund this somehow. So please give us ideas. The team has always been wandering around here, so please let us know. For using it, I don't think I need to tell you how to use it. It's like using any type of looking glass. But these are the typical things I've mentioned before that people are using RouteViews for. This one's kind of fun. This is a nice YouTube video that Barrett Lyon put together. Don't play it now in the venue. It's on the venue Wi-Fi. But have a look at this. This is the entire RouteViews data archive, V4 since '97, V6. When was it? 2003, I think. Made as a movie. And it's actually really interesting just to see how the internet's developed over that time. By the way, if you've got any BGP data before 1997, we would love to have it, please. We'll add it to the archive because, I don't know, we just seem to think, oh, it might be a good idea to record some of this stuff. Wish we'd started that in the early 90s and not 1997. So if you have old BGP data, we'd love to hear from you. Use cases, well, you can't really read these. It's not meant to be, I'm going to go through them, but it's just the sort of thing. I ranted about this one in the tutorial yesterday. What are these people doing? Why do we need so many communities? Why do we need so many prepends? You spend endless hours of fun looking at the BGP table on these collectors. It's just truly extraordinary. And I keep paraphrasing other people who say, why does this internet thing still work? I really don't know. You see some of the stuff here. And just the other one, if you're using RouteViews data for your day job or your projects or your products, please acknowledge that, that where you got it from. It's just a nice, helpful request because, what you're doing won't really work without the effort that we're putting in. Another one, well, I feel the pain on the second point there is we get a lot of people who say, oh, we got the data from RouteViews, ask them. And it's like, well, we're just a collector. So we're not responsible for the junk that people send us. If you send us junk, we will collect it. We will record it. No, we will not go and delete entries in the BGP table. So I think for a lot of the organizations who use the data, try and educate the tech support folks who are dealing with the customers about what the issue might be, rather than delegating tech support to Philip, because Philip does have one or two better things to do. We just see what's in the global routing table. We can't fix bugs in software implementations from different vendors. We can't delete entries in BGP table. We can't change AS paths that you don't want to see. They are there because we see them. Now, just the final few minutes. So for peering coordinators, so this is the general peering community. We have an open peering policy. So if you're at an exchange point and you peer with a route server, you'll be peering with RouteViews. We will see you there. I mean, we've got a couple of exchanges. We're not quite there yet, but we'll get there. But by and large, open peering policy, we will peer with all exchange point route servers. We do want you to have a peering DB entry, so much so now that if you come along and say you want to peer with RouteViews and you're not in peering DB or your entry doesn't match where you claim you are, then we'll say, please go fix, and then we'll come back, let's talk. Because we're automating everything. We're a lot of tools that assume peering DB is accurate. So if you've ever used like the Cloudflare or Meta or all the others, they require the same thing. So, these days we have to automate this stuff to make it scale. So please have a good peering DB entry that matches reality. V4 prefixes over V4 peering, V6 prefixes over V6 peering. We don't do join them all together. We want a distinct address family for the peering. We want to receive the entire BGP table if it's possible. If you've only got one prefix to send to the world, that's not very interesting for anybody else. So we really want to see what the full table looks like. Add path, honestly, doesn't make a lot of sense on eBGP. I know some people are interested in what it might look like, but we don't want that, please. If you send us bogons, it will appear in the historical record that you sent bogons. So it's probably a good idea not to send us bogons. So please don't do that either. Some folks want us to send prefixes. We don't have any. We're a collector. And I still get some disconcerted peers. But the BGP session's up, but you haven't sent us anything. It's like, well, what are we going to send you? What do you want to get from us? Because we have nothing to send. Another one that's kind of interesting, some operators are present in multiple exchange points, multiple locations around the world. These are interesting because your view in different parts of the world will quite likely be different. So if we have capacity at the collector there, then it'll be an interesting peering to set up. So we've got quite a few of those in all places around the world. And will we peer with everyone? Well, the answer is not yes. So if you're at the exchange point, you talk to the route server, the answer is yes. But for bilateral and multi-hop peerings, we're quite selective. Right? So bilateral, if you're going to send us the full table, very happy to do it. Multi-hop peering, we do want the full table. Otherwise, why are we going to take up a slot in a collector with just to learn 3 prefixes? So I really do want to hear the full table. And we're interested in new, interesting, diverse peers all around the world. I know that's not quite obvious what that might mean, but there are a lot of places which are big exchange points, very, very interesting ecosystems that we're not present at yet. So certainly in Asia, I live in Australia, spend all my time traveling Asia Pac. This is a very, very interesting part of the world, at least from my point of view, and also, from seeing what the routing table looks like. So we're trying to fill in some of these places. Otherwise, the final bit, hosting RouteViews. So looking at locations. But again, it's interesting. A lot of exchange points want a RouteViews node to promote the value of the exchange point, which is nice. We really appreciate the support. But if you've only got 5 peers, that's not really very interesting for us. Whereas, we're looking for big places or places with really interesting user communities. So research and education is interesting, given NSRC background and University of Oregon. But for the commercial internet, the bigger internet exchange points are interesting. And we've got lots of offers and lots of interesting places to try and fill up in the next year or so. As for hosting it, well, we don't have money to pay anybody to host anything. So the host usually could be the exchange point themselves. That's a very common model. They could be members of the exchange point. It could be the data center the exchange point is sitting in. So they sponsor the exchange point port, and there's no traffic. It's just BGP session. And also the transit. We need to export all the MRT for the BGP updates and the BGP table back to our archive at the University of Oregon. So that needs a little bit of traffic. It depends how much update volume is, but 10 megabits per second is not exactly big. And we like the VM. I mean, the hardware collector is really an extreme last resort because that then involves bits that can break, shipping things, dealing with customs, as the Nanog folks found with the t-shirts coming here. It's, it's never really straightforward trying to ship stuff, whereas a VM is very straightforward. Specifications, it's not that complicated. The collectors aren't really that big. We just have to have enough RAM and disk space to function and keep updates before we ship them to back to U of O, and enough CPU that FRR can operate. FRR is kind of single-threaded, so it doesn't need a huge amount of CPU as such. We're using Ubuntu 22.04 just because, well, that's what we use and have used at NSRC for a lot of years. We're moving to 24.04. In fact, we've got a couple of collectors on that, but once all our tooling and so on, we're happy that it all works. We'll be using that. And we just use FRR because. And of course, once somebody hosts the collector, we've got a nice big page to recognize your sponsorship or support of it. As I say, we don't have money to pay for any thing. We're very much a community project, so we really do appreciate everybody who's supported the project so far. And we just try and acknowledge that as best we can on the support page. Also, keeping contact details up to date is good. We love peering DB, so keep that up to date as well. And otherwise, for supporting, always looking for support. Thousands of operators around the world use it. So many people I talk to just assume that it's always going to be there. They forget that it actually needs resources to keep it running. So if you love it and use it, please help carry on a great project that Dave Meyer and other folks started all those years ago. So peer with us or acknowledge the value of the information. If the product or service is commercially successful, we look forward to getting that support to help keeping it going as well. Otherwise, that's pretty much all I have. If there are any questions or any comments, happy to have them in the final 1 minute that's left.
Hello. Jonathan from Metrotic. So I have a question. How is RouteViews different from NLNOG Global Looking Glass? And why are you not sharing data, or are you and we're not aware? How does that work for you? Are you aware of NLNOG Global Looking Glass?
Yes, I'm aware of it. No, we don't share. All these are complementary projects. A lot of people seem to think we compete with RIPE NCC and the RIPE RIS. We don't. We collaborate, we cooperate. So, yeah.
Okay, so it's just entirely different purpose, different project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we're happy to see all these other projects that are doing similar things. A lot of these have very specific functions. We keep the data. I think we're the only ones that keep data since time began, pretty much. Okay, time began plus 5 years. So.
Adair Thaxton from Internet 2. About a month ago, Aaron sent out a notification saying that they were looking to discuss removing FTP support from their reporting and stuff. So on the topic of legacy protocols, has there been any discussion or intent of you guys retiring Telnet?
Well, I mean, Shep mentioned it in Seattle, and there were a couple of protests. Oh, you can't do that. So, yeah, I mean, what I was mentioning there is, using, well, the API, for one, that would hopefully get rid of most of the bots that are using Telnet. Now, I don't know if the BMP feed would probably replace that, but the looking glass is the other thing I really want to get in place, because that will, I mean, certainly my own use of RouteViews since 1995 has been Telnet to the thing. If I had a looking glass, and I use a lot of exchange point looking glasses around the world, I'd be happier to do that because it is the point and click solution. But there will be the scream from somewhere in the corner who still wants Telnet, so we'll leave that one collector probably with Telnet until we see nobody else using it. And then, yeah. But the vendors, with laptops and so on, they've done very good work at removing Telnet from operating systems, so it'll probably just die a natural death eventually.
Hisham Ibrahim, RipeNCC. We run RipeFrizz, as you mentioned, and we're absolutely not in competition. We love RouteViews, and the reason why I went to the mic is actually to support what you're saying there. The biggest value is the historical data that a project like this have. Many times during a year, you would find researchers coming up to us wanting to look into the historical data, understanding what happened, the history of the internet. So there's a lot of value there, and there's use cases that people haven't even thought to today, but then they need this data tomorrow to be available. So keeping that and preserving that is a great effort that you guys are doing in RouteViews. I recognize all the pains, the CentOS, we're going through that as well, all the stuff there. I also recognize how difficult getting funding for projects like this does, but people see a lot of value in it. So I am endorsing that message of, please, if you see value here, what you heard, please, this is a great project to support, peer with, and work with. It goes a long way. So thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Thanks, Hisham.
All right. Thank you very much, Philip. We appreciate it. Thank you.